Hey everybody, welcome to a very special edition of the Rugby Report. My name's Dwayne Burkhardt. This week, we're going to change up things pretty substantially. What you may or may not have noticed in the last few weeks as I've started the Rugby Report is that I have been experimenting each week with different things, like I will wear a different shirt, or I will work with the green screen, or I'll change the color of the background, or I'll change the format, like last week I had longer descriptions of games and things. Well, circumstances have caused us to really change the format this week because about 72 hours ago, I was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. And I'm okay, it's not life-threatening, but it has made it so that I look a little bit like Rocky Balboa at the end of 15 rounds of Rocky 1 or Rocky 2, which is why I'm wearing the shades today. It also makes me a far cooler rugby reporter, I think we can all agree. But what we're going to do this week is, since I normally have a teleprompter, but I can't see the teleprompter right now, we're going to go ahead and just wing it. So this experiment is going to be very different. I'm literally just going to talk about the week in NPC Rugby. We're going to cover each game, talk about round 4, briefly touch on the Rugby Championship, and then I'm out of here. So let's just see how this goes. So round 3, actually, last week we start with round 2. The very last game of round 2 was a midweek game, which is the Otago Hawke's Bay game. And you'll remember that I described this game as one of those games where records don't matter, stats don't matter. It's just these two teams always seem to play incredibly exciting games, which really tend to try to test my cardiovascular system. And frankly, this game wasn't any different. It came right down to the wire, up and down, back and forth. Otago, what can you say? They came out winners 18-13. I went out on a limb with them there because I thought that they were on a roll. They did it. Happy to see it. And Otago won that game 18-13. So let's get into round 3 then. Round 3 started on Friday night. Counties Manukau hosted Waikato, and a game that pretty much went the way I thought it was going to go. It was surprisingly even for most of the game. Neither team played particularly effective defense. In fact, most of the scores came from mistakes on offense. The lineouts for both teams were pretty questionable throughout the game. But in the end, Waikato was able to take advantage of more of the mistakes of Counties than Counties was for Waikato. And the end result was Waikato pulling away late in the game to win the game 34-20. Again, my call. And that was at Navigation's home stadium, which again, one of my favorite stadiums to watch a game in. Saturday's action, didn't start so well for me. Taranaki Bulls. The Taranaki Bulls, who had been stampeded in the previous week by Bay of Plenty, came home to face the otherwise 2-0 white-hot Canterbury team, and I thought this game was going to kind of be a walk in the park for Canterbury. But I also said, you'll remember, at the beginning of the year, I noted that Canterbury has been a kind of up-and-down team in recent years where they've been a little bit inconsistent, where they win games that they ought to win, and then they lose a game that they should have won. And I thought, the first 2 weeks of this season, they've blown away the teams they've faced. They've got all that behind them. They're not going to do that to me again. And they did it to me again. The weather was a factor, but you know what? The weather's a factor for both teams. And it was almost as if Taranaki, in their loss to Bay of Plenty the previous week, actually learned something in that loss about ball movement. They're like, hey, you know what? We can have fun. We can move the ball a little bit more. And they did. They moved the ball better. And frankly, they took it to them. Canterbury had the chance to come back and steal this game late, but they couldn't do it. Taranaki wins 16-10. Now, the next game was another game that was seriously affected by the weather, but again, weather affects both teams. Wellington, the Lions held the home field against the Northland Taniwha. There will be, by the way, no bloopers reel today. I'm just going to roll with it. If I make a mistake, we just keep going. So Wellington hosted Northland. I kind of thought the Lions would take this game at home. I have been discounting how great Northland has been playing, and Northland, frankly, they played a better game. They simply outplayed the Lions start to finish, whistle to whistle. They deserve the win here. Nobody scored in the entire second half of the game. And again, the rain, the weather, I get it. But the bottom line, Northland Taniwha Good on you guys. 15-6 over the Wellington Lions in Wellington. Northland moves to 2-1. Wellington to 1-2. The next game, well, this is a game that I didn't really think was going to be the game of the week. I thought it was going to be a good game, but wow, did it impress me. North Harbor hosted Tasman. Now, I did not know when I called this game last week for North Harbor that Sevu Reese, the Crusaders star, was going to come back and play for Tasman this week. Had I known that, I'm not really sure whether it would have changed my call on the game, but it sure would have made it a lot closer for me. In the end, didn't matter. North Harbor still won the game. Both of these teams, if you want to watch a game this week on replay, whether you've got Flow Sports or Sky or whether you're just going to YouTube to watch it, this is probably the game to watch again because from the opening whistle, both teams back and forth, very aggressive. Everybody on offense, and you know what? Nobody was giving up any territory. Let's just go. We're going to take the ball and run with it and do what we can. And both teams had that aggressive posture throughout the game. Very, very impressive. It was a back-and-forth battle, really exciting to watch. In the end, did Sevu Reese make a difference? Well, kind of. He got a yellow card, and while he was out with a yellow, North Harbor went on a 14-0 run. They won the game by 8, so you decide. But in the end, it was North Harbor, 35-27, an exciting game and a great win for North Harbor. Now, moving on to Sunday's action, the game that I did predict would be the game of the week and a game which did not disappoint. Bay of Plenty went into Auckland, and I got to tell you this, I didn't know this before the game, but I found out while watching. Bay of Plenty had not won a game in Eden Park against Auckland since 2004. It had been 18 years, and the John Drake boot, a little silver boot, was at stake in the game. And I'm telling you, another great game to watch. As you all know from this podcast, I think Bay of Plenty is just simply the most exciting team to watch. They're just they're playing excellent team rugby right now. You want to see a great example of this? The try at the beginning of the second half by Bay of Plenty. 6-7 passes, just a beautiful example of how they're really in sync with one another, playing really spectacular rugby right now. It was really close. Bay of Plenty pulled away late, and then Auckland scored at the end to make it a little bit closer and pick up that bonus point. But in the end, Bay of Plenty did win this game, as I predicted. Bay of Plenty 21, Auckland 17, and the Steamers have won for the first time in Eden Park since 2004. Now we move to another game. From there, we go all the way to the south end of New Zealand. We go to Invercargill Rugby Stadium, where the Southland Stags, who are one of the best 0-2 teams I've seen in the NPC in recent memory. They've played really, really grit ball. They've played an incredibly, I don't know how to describe it in real time without having a script to tell me, but just really impressive rugby so far this year, with real heart. And they played this game exactly the same way against Otago, so a real local derby kind of game there. Another game that was back and forth. Southland had a chance to win this right at the end of the game. It was really an incredibly exciting, heart-stopping, I need oxygen kind of finish. But in the end, Otago did take the game 37-32. Another heartbreaking loss for the Stags, but you know what? If I'm the Stags, I don't hang my head on this one. They are still playing really solid rugby, and somewhere along the line, they are going to shock somebody. A great game played by both teams. Otago just happened to come away with the win. Finally, in week 3, we go to Hawke's Bay. We go to Manawatu to Central Energy Trust Arena, where the Turbos took on Hawke's Bay to see if just once so far this year the Turbos could not give up at least 40 points. And they didn't. They gave up 43 points to Hawke's Bay, so Manawatu's defense still just not able to do it. They did score 17, but in the end the Magpies just steamrolled over the Turbos again. Manawatu drops to 0-4, and until they discover or rediscover how to play defense, it's going to be a tough one. So let's go ahead now at round 3 finished. Again, there will be no bloopers. That's just live, folks. We're doing it live. My record this week, 5-2. The only 2 games I missed were Wellington and Taranaki. And you know what? I think I missed those games with just about everybody else. So 5-2 this week. My total record now, 16-6. Let's look ahead to round 4 to see where we're going. This coming weekend, a tough game right off the top. Tasman goes and hosts Canterbury. Now, Canterbury has just shown that famous or infamous inconsistency that I talked about earlier, and they've just lost a game they should have won. But they're going into Tasman to play the Mako, who have just lost a close one, have Sevu Reece back, and for the first time this year showed me the kind of fins-up Mako kind of playing that we know that they're capable of. So this is a really tough game to call, but I'll tell you what, I am going to kind of go on a limb here, and I'm going to say Canterbury drops 2 in a row, and Tasman comes back and wins this game. Tasman will win against Canterbury. Next up, we're going to go to Waikato. Waikato playing the Manawatu Turbos. They're at home at FMG Stadium in Hamilton. The Turbos have not yet shown that they can play a game without giving up at least 40 points. This is kind of a no-brainer call for me. Damian McKenzie, he could probably play with one arm behind his back, and the Moo-Moos are still going to win this game. Waikato wins. Saturday's action, we're going to start up at Hawke's Bay. Here it is, folks, the Ranfurly Shield game. It is Hawke's Bay versus North Harbour. Now, the last time the Ranfurly Shield up was just a couple of weeks ago, and Hawke's Bay barely held off Counties. And I'm telling you, the way North Harbour is playing right now, and as really kind of off as Hawke's Bay has been. Frankly, we still haven't seen Hawke's Bay play their game so far this year. I'm giving this one to North Harbour. Okay, North Harbour is going to win, and they're going to take the Ranfurly Shield out of Napier and back to North Auckland. The second game on Saturday is going to be Auckland playing Otago. Auckland's going to be pretty annoyed having just dropped that exciting game to Bay of Plenty. Otago coming off of 3 heart-stopping wins in a row. Just absolutely staggering. And by the way, remember that opening game against Counties, which they lost by 1. They're one play, they're one crazy kick away from going into this game 4-0. But you know what? In Eden Park, against Auckland, my heart is always going to be with Otago. But my brain says Auckland comes back and they win this game. Auckland wins. Sunday's action takes us all the way back over to Taronga, where Bay of Plenty is going to play Counties. And you know what? Counties, again, this is not your father's Steelers team. Steelers have been playing very well. They've got a couple of good starters back in the game this week. But as I said, and I'm going to say it again, Bay of Plenty is playing the best team rugby I have seen in the NPC maybe ever. It's just been exciting and fun to watch, and I think back home, they've got to do it again. Bay of Plenty is going to win this game. They take down Counties on Sunday morning. The second game on Sunday, Wellington is going to host the Taranaki Bulls. Wellington coming off a really tough loss in that really nasty rain to Northland. The Tanafa did surprise me, but they did win that fair and square. Wellington's going to be smarting. The Taranaki Bulls have just played a really decent game, and they beat a team that they weren't supposed to beat in Canterbury. But can they go into Wellington and make it 2 in a row? Yes. Yes, they can. I think they really can. I'm going out on a limb here because my heart kind of tells me that Wellington is probably going to play very well in this game, and they're going to be smarting after that loss. But I think the Bulls are going to pull even at 2-2, and they're going to come away with this win. Taranaki on the road is going to win this game. The final game on Sunday is a battle of the lands. The lands game as Northland, you go way up. Northland takes on Southland. The North against the South. Usually kind of a small market game. You never kind of knew. Both teams were kind of smarting, and you kind of thought, well, whoever wins, wins. Not this time. The Northland Tanafa have been playing really, really great rugby this year. But you know what? Even though they're 0-3, so is Southland. Don't be surprised if this is a knockdown, drag-out game. But you know what? They're at home, the Tanafa are. They're way up there in Whangarei, and I got to say, at home, Southland, as good as they're playing, I think Northland wins this game. But watch out, because somewhere along the line, Southland's going to shock somebody. Round 4 gets an extra game this week. It's a Wednesday night game next week, which we'll get to talk about again next week because it won't have happened yet. But just to let you know, Canterbury is going to go ahead and play North Harbour in Canterbury. That's going to be a tough game, and I'm not even going to make my call on this game until the Rugby Report next week. So that's the Rugby Report for the NPC games of Round 3 and Round 4. Quickly before I go this week, remember that the Rugby Championship Series returns this weekend as the All Blacks play Argentina. And who do I predict is going to win that game? Well, of course, it's going to be the All Blacks. The All Blacks are going to win that game. The other game is Australia versus South Africa, and I know the Wallabies are playing better ball. And they played a really good match against Argentina, actually 2 good matches against Argentina. They were both blowouts, 1 for each team. But against South Africa, even in Australia, I don't know. South Africa has really impressed me in their last several series, and I just don't see the Springboks going down to the Wallabies right now. Hate to say it, guys, but I'm afraid South Africa wins this game. And that's it. That's all we've got for the Rugby Report this week. Thanks for sticking with me through the abbreviated version. Hopefully we'll be back with a more regular kind of broadcast for you next time, or I'll just try another experiment. That is, after all, what this podcast is for. Thanks very much, and remember, you don't have to be crazy to play the All Blacks, but it helps. See you next time. Having a regular, well, you know what? I didn't even have a closing line.